Recording. All right. So just let me know if you need anything.
Yep, no, thank you, sir. Carrie there. Muted.
Couldn't see my whole screen yet. Okay,
There we
there we
go.
are. Sorry for the last minute call in. I've been sick for like a week and I thought I was gonna wear a mask and then I was like, I don't want to spread anything around. So
So, hey, what link did you use?
I used the one that's on the website for the TAC.
So it did come up. Okay.
He might have just put it up there.
He might have, yeah, might have disposed. We're having an internal issue. We couldn't get the link to come up.
Okay,
So
yeah,
we created a new one.
I looked all over for it. That's why I was running kind of late. I was like, where is it at? But it's it was
It's
on like
it's in our Google Doc.
well, oh, this one it's not in the Google, oh, in the Google Doc. There's one under the government website for the city under the calendar. I don't know. You have to go through the commission, the calendar to the commission to the, oh wait, no, this was a whole different page on virtual meeting instructions that I found it.
Eric must have just put it up there.
Yeah. So once I finally found it, I was good to go. And that's on me. Okay, so I'm gonna cough a lot and I apologize. I know you all have the agenda. I don't know if we want to share it or not, but we can just work through it. I will call this meeting to order at 5:36 p.m. and we will take attendance. So Carrie Falkenrath is here. Go around the room.
Was-
So you have
She-
it.
She's got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
All right. I couldn't remember if we still do that or not.
Yeah, you have to do it every meeting.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if we have to announce ourselves or if Aaron just knows us now. So, and I think I saw, did I see a citizen come in the room for a, comment?
No comments.
No comments? Okay. Thank you for joining us. Oh, and I skipped over review and approve the previous meeting minutes. Did anyone have any comments on those? Yep, look good. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second. I think I can do that by Robert's rules. So approved. And now I just got to invite citizens. So we had one. Thank you again for joining us.
Maybe we could vote on the minutes. That's all
Oh,
right.
Do we have to vote on the minutes?
If you second it, then you, all in
So then
favor.
you have to say
Oh, yeah, all in
Any
favor.
opposed? There you go.
Sorry, thanks. You can tell I'm trying to hurry before I just have a coughing fit. Okay, old business. So review status of action items. I hope everybody saw the email that came out from Captain Perks that we are going to have to transition the Google Doc that we just transitioned into. We are going to have to transition back out of because we are not supposed to be using those legally. They've made a ruling for the city. I very briefly got an email from Chris, and I think the plan is then that we will review the action items, and I can pull them up here, and then we will manually send any updates or create any updates during the meeting, and then Captain Perks and or Aaron, can you tell me if we have an action item and we make progress or have a comment on it in between meetings, can we send that to Chris and can he keep a master list that then gets, reviewed or posted in our meeting minutes every month? Is that enough transparency?
I would say it wouldn't necessarily be part of the minutes, but it would be, you could make it part of the agenda.
Okay, yeah, that
And
makes
there,
sense.
and then it would become part of the minute.
Okay. And I started to attach it to our agenda this time and
That
I was like,
makes
I don't know if we should do that yet or not. So, okay.
But from what I understand, yeah, Chris could update it and then we would share it every meeting. But so
Okay.
we could still be getting things done between meetings.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, but
Via
just couldn't do it on, and via email and then make it an agenda item and then present it and then it would be attached to a meeting
Then it would
as,
become part of
then
the
become one
minutes
meeting.
of the meeting.
Okay.
So explain that again. We can email.
yes.
And
Because I thought I was corrected on emails a year ago.
Certain things can be emailed, certain things cannot.
And what cannot?
So if a singular person is emailing something and it's not more than what would be considered a quorum, it's not an official business item. So if you're just talking, you can email things and discuss it back and forth. But if it becomes an official agenda item, or there's more than 4 of you that are meeting together or something like that, that becomes an official meeting. and
So
it has to
one
be
person can send an email to one other person. But not more than that.
public.
I'm lost. I mean,
It's gray area.
I think email freely, and if someone tells you not to, then.
well, I've been told not to, so I have not.
Right.
I think that, I remember
Uh,
that, I think you were just discussing business. Right?
I-
Something about the high
I
school.
just, it was just came out from Greg that there was, that
Right.
emails weren't okay.
Particularly from your personal emails. But.
Yeah.
It'd probably be better if there were agenda items or action items that you wanted to send to Clark, send it to me. And then I can send it,
And I think that
and
was
then we
the
have an
option if
official
you want.
record of that on official business.
Okay.
That would be better because we wouldn't be.
Send you an email, and then you can decide how to handle it.
And I'll forward it to Chris and that kind of stuff, and then we have an official record of that, and then it wouldn't be swimming in murky waters on communications. Look, oh, Carrie shared her screen.
That sounds good. No, yeah, caught y'all off guard. I was gonna see if I had an editable one, but here's our last action items that I have. So we can just run through these. We had, North Elm was an action item. We did create a memo. Is there any update on where that's progressed to? It's only been a couple weeks, so.
Is that the North Elm one? Yes.
Yes,
That's been
North
forwarded-
Elm.
That's been forwarded up. So
Perfect.
Where
Thank
it's at
you.
now, I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, no, that's, at least we know it's been forwarded on. Step one
Yes.
has been complete. Steve there was an action item for Steve to create start a policy on our parking approvals, which is kind of, I don't know if anybody else, Steve, I know you sent out a link to kind of look at what you've done so far.
Right.
And I don't know if you brought copies. We probably need to put that. at
Well,
some
I brought
point.
copies last time I was here.
Okay,
And then, I mean, I'm really the only one who replied to it, so.
right.
I hope you had copies of it, okay, because I saw a lot of reading and I couldn't make a lot of sense of it. You know,
Yeah, with all the
Uh,
edits. So
yeah.
here's my thoughts, and maybe we have a little bit of time, I think, to discuss this. I think we have two things going on here personally, and that's what I was trying to kind of separate them within that proposed document. Is one of them is, just applications for parking in general, or no parking provisions. And parking provisions can be no parking, or they can be resident parking. And so we were kind of addressing our stance or our general guidelines on those simultaneously. And I thought it would make more sense to separate them, because if someone's asking for no parking, that's a little bit of a different animal than asking for resident parking. And so that's the comments I had made on your draft, was kind of trying to separate those two things, because we were kind of dealing with them simultaneously. And I don't know if everyone agrees or follows my logic. And maybe you can, when you get a chance, you can look at that draft. But
if
I
you
was,
could-
oh, go
well,
ahead.
we didn't see a draft. We just saw suggested changes, but I didn't see anything in what you sent that was a draft from.
I didn't know if anybody else had suggested changes. So,
Okay.
and since it was your document, I didn't want to create a draft out of it. You have the right, I guess, if you're familiar with Google Docs, to approve or reject any
Yeah.
comments or suggestions.
Yeah.
So it's hard to kind of follow them, and I would be happy to take what I did and put it all together in another version, and we could compare them side by side. If that sounds good. How about the
Be helpful.
Yeah,
Okay, then we'll put that down as an action item 2 for me.
And Carrie, could you just say again how you were separating that, or
Yeah.
how you thought there
Yes.
were two different things going on?
So we kind of were talking about my idea is that these are our guidelines, just like we have a guidelines on when someone comes to us with a request for a stop sign. These are our general guidelines on how we respond. If you meet these certain criteria, then it should be a yes, or whatever. So I was trying to do the same thing with parking, but I think there's two different requests at play. Someone could come in for no parking at all. And someone could come in for resident only parking. And those are two kind of different animals to me, because resident only parking, then I would feel like there's more consideration at play. You know, why is it resident only? That's where we might get into the maybe more of the timed restrictions or what's going on around them. So I tried to separate the no parking and just pure safety. The road is this wide, no parking on one lane makes one side makes sense because we need a 12-foot clear zone at all times is very generally what we had been talking about. And that to me is kind of straightforward. Now, if someone comes in and wants resident only, Steve had, which I thought were great, some suggestions on the amount of resident only parking that we could approve, or, you know, or that we would be looking to approve based on the density of the block. But that's very different than just no parking down one side of the street, maintaining a 12-foot clear zone. If you know what I mean, or am I making sense?
There is an overlap though, in that in the high school area, some of the areas are no parking only for certain hours. And
Right.
my consideration of that for these years has been that's to keep to make it not possible for high school students to park there. If there's no parking until 9 a.m. or after, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So that's the overlap, and I don't know.
Right. Right. And I think, and then there's another overlap too, we actually dig in a little bit into that same document on what happens when this document goes into effect. So I think we're covering, personally, I feel like we're covering a lot of areas in one document. We need to be clear about at which point we're addressing which. And I totally agree with you that no parking is there because of the surrounding institutions. That being said, that particular no parking would not meet our safety criteria for parking. So in that case, when we reviewed those general areas, if they didn't meet our safety criteria, that would kick them, I guess, my high level planning thinking at this point, they could come back and request resident only, and then we can see if it meets those criteria. So I was trying to make it kind of a staged, like safety is our primary goal. And then, fairness to the residents who need parking is kind of that next level of consideration. If
It might work.
makes-
Yeah, let's see what you put together.
Okay, yeah, we're covering a lot. And I feel like it'll be more transparent to the residents and maybe even to us if it's kind of a step-by-step process. And that's where I was going with it. I was just trying to kind of separate the steps. So I will put together a draft that kind of is what I was suggesting, that kind of separates those different parking requests. Okay. And these are all gray. I'm not going to go through the gray ones because the gray, in my understanding, is they're complete. So, and we might ask maybe Chris to move those to the end, or even, take them out after they've been, I guess, left in for maybe one meeting or something. The Complete Street Initiative. So Clark, did you want to talk some more about that?
Sure. We are meeting tomorrow with the Sustainability Commission, and either the mayor, David, and or Pam Bliss, who is the city councilwoman for the Sustainability Commission. So that's sort of exciting that we're actually getting together tomorrow, 1 o'clock. I don't think you're able to make it.
I'll be teaching American history.
You'll be teaching American history. Are you still allowed to do that?
If I'm careful.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
So I was just looking at the agenda for the meeting tomorrow. Pretty basic: call to order, determine our goals, and other. So I think after the meeting tomorrow, I think we'll have an idea of sort of who is taking ownership of this. Maybe the Sustainability Commission, maybe us, maybe it's still a joint thing. But I'll tell you, I've been really looking around at what some of our neighboring communities are doing.
Yeah.
If you go on Kirkwood's website, it's amazing how much stuff they're doing. And I want to try to figure out who's driving that. Is it the city manager? Is it the council? Is it the mayor? Is it citizens? But there's a lot. And we talked last week about how we have some of these great ideas. And we said, well, they all take money, right? And so some of them just might not happen. So I just pulled up this is Safe Street and Road Award for all. This was awards, last fiscal year awards by state. I mean, they awarded millions and millions of dollars to communities. And then this is broken down by Missouri. So for instance, Cape Girardeau, their Safe Streets Action Plan Grant, $160,000. Carthage, Columbia, $1.4 million award. Kirkwood was awarded $480,000 to help implement their plan. So there's money out there, I think, but what we need to really do is have this policy. And then the stuff comes from that. It doesn't happen overnight. But I'll just have one final thing on this, why I believe so strongly in it. North Elm, I was walking there a week ago, Thursday night. And we all know that we've been talking about North Elm and how fast the cars go. There's one sidewalk. There's construction on it. Part of that sidewalk is out. And they've closed it. I mean, I got over the hump. This is at night. I'm walking down, sidewalk closed. I mean, I had to take my life in my hands to run around this thing. Cars are zooming. I took pictures of this. So I reached out to the Public Works here, and they've always been responsive when they haven't on this issue. I'm going to follow up again tomorrow, but they really need to, I think if we had the mentality of a complete streets, that our streets are for motorists, pedestrians, bikes, they're for everybody's safety, that this kind of thing wouldn't happen in the future. I think it would be, hey, you're going to close the sidewalk, we got to make a room for pedestrians to walk, so we close a lane. I mean, they very easily could close that lane that we're wanting to do permanently anyway, with cones and an arrow. There were 4 kids walking down there yesterday. I mean, my heart was just pounded seeing these kids dodging into the traffic. And because we don't have that mentality. So I got off my soapbox. I just think we're moving in the right direction. I'm really proud. I'm glad that we have this subcommittee meeting tomorrow. So we're moving things.
Just because of some personal experience with sidewalk being replaced this winter, so this is a contractor, so mine was a water thing, so it steps, so
Right.
we're working on city, but that has to be with the expectation of the contractor, so.
Right. And I think we as the city need to, if they're, we know that they must have to coordinate with us, right? That they're coming in.
My experience was even whether they got a permit or not. And the city said they didn't, the contractor said we did. So I don't even know how well all that works.
Right.
Yeah.
The city's still in charge
coordination.
though. Yeah, the city should have construction inspectors for any construction being done who, in most
I mean-
places they visit the site on a regular basis that's predetermined, but
The last time I ran across this situation was on Kirkham when Spire was doing some work.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing, and they called, and the next day, city brought out an arrow and closed that lane off and made it safe. This one hasn't happened, and it's terrifying. And we only have one sidewalk there, so it's really, and it's right at the crest, right after the crest of the hill, so cars are coming. How fast do we know they're coming? 53 miles an hour
Yep.
down
yeah,
that hill, and there's no sidewalk. So if you do walk all the way down and decide, I'm not gonna risk it and go all the way back, then you have to, I don't know, get well over to Rock Hill, I guess, and down or Gore. So anyway, we're meeting tomorrow. Carrie, you're gonna be there, right?
yeah. I was just gonna say, I'll note that usually in my experience, the best way to get these things rolling is to get buy-in at all levels. And so I think it's it's pretty good that we're gonna have 2 council members and the mayor there. If, I think if I read that all correctly. So, you know, when we have this conversation, we have start to get buy-in at the highest levels.
Yeah.
So,
Is there community input at that meeting tomorrow?
I think it's been posted because I've seen a Zoom link, so I think you can,
I can go tomorrow.
I think so. It's here at 1 o'clock. I don't really see why not. I don't know the rules. We don't even know if we're allowed to email, so I would say.
they,
I don't know, do you know, Captain?
Should be a public meeting.
Yeah,
Unless it's a closed session, which I don't know why.
right, and it is, I mean, they announced it, so sure, we'll be in this room at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
it's not on the, I was just looking back at that virtual meetings page that I found. It's, there's not a virtual meeting link for it, but unless they put it under sustainability or traffic advisory, unless they use one of ours. So,
Right.
but anyway,
Anyway,
yeah, so I'm looking forward to that too. It'll be interesting to see, you know, the kind of support we get.
It says here, the
Is it better?
subcommittee meeting will be open to the public at City Hall or at Zoom, so absolutely.
He just said he posted, usually.
The
Sweet.
sustainability. Okay.
Okay, so that's where we are on that. Now I'm switching back because that was all of our action items. So I am switching back to the agenda. You all probably have it. I don't know if I need it still on the screen, but we got the update on North Elm already as part of our action items. So North Elm, Lockwood to Big Bend, we have discussed. It was kind of pending, waiting on traffic data that we request. It sounds like it might be some time until that comes through. I did want to propose, and I was hoping to have a draft today, but as I said, I've been sick. I wanted to propose another memo to the council that in the interim, the city considers restriping Elm with narrower driving lanes.
Carrie,
And yes,
is this South Elm or North Elm?
it is still North Elm. I think it turns south at 44, doesn't it? Did I
No,
put
it's-
south in there?
No, turn South Elm at Lockwood.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be South Elm, Lockwood to Big Bend.
Well, that would be my fault in the agenda if the agenda's wrong.
I saw it and I meant to email it and I forgot.
Okay, that's my fault. We're talking about South Elm. In my
Yeah, I
head,
saw-
it
'cause
changes.
I saw that and thought it was about the lane that we talked about last time with the
Oh, yeah.
lane changes and all that and the narrowing of lanes.
Sorry,
Well,
it changes at Lockwood. Okay, in my
You
head.
don't
it
have to
changes.
apologize, especially if you're sick. No worries.
There, I just changed it. I was right. Look, it's all correct in the agenda. So without kind of digging into this too much, I guess I'll see. I wanted to see, I assume most people would be in favor of at least me coming up with a proposal, but the lanes on Lockwood, and I haven't confirmed this because they really don't want us measuring, although I did measure off of an aerial, and they're about 15 feet wide. So if you can think, if you're familiar with, I'm pulling up because this is what I do. I'm pulling up an aerial right now that we can talk about as soon as I'm gonna have to be able to see my other screen. So where are we? Let's see, Brentwood, Rock Hill, here we are, Elm. Whoops, wrong part. So the lanes here are about 15 feet wide, which is pretty wide. But in the past, one thing that's been done in a couple of different areas, so we can point to these on Kirkham. You can see right here, they just narrowed that lane down. In this case, it's enough to add a parking lane. We don't have enough to add a parking lane. But adding that white edge line has been shown to slow drivers down just because it narrows their field of
Yeah.
vision. It narrows their driving lane. It also would create a buffer for anyone on the sidewalk in that area, which increases some safety. I feel like that's something we could suggest in the interim, just to keep this moving forward.
Carrie, that really causes concern for me. People have admitted to parking there. And so if you have a white line and a person parked there and they're hung out over the line, we got liability.
Right. No, and this is my other idea, actually. So the street is about 30 feet wide. So technically, that is actually wide enough for 2 lanes and a parking lane, assuming it is 30 feet wide, which then I don't know if the residents are going to accept. Sorry, I'm zooming around here to show you all. This has been addressed in another place within Webster, where they just, here's South Rock Hill outside, if you're familiar with this area outside of this is Southwest Park. So this just happened within the last, I don't know, 5 or so years. These were, again, 2 very wide driving lanes, a lot of speeding on Rock Hill. They restriped it and made 2 narrower lanes and a parking lane. And it works great. That parking lane gets used quite a bit, especially with event soccer and stuff at the.
And you know
yeah.
what else that prevented? They were gonna enlarge the parking lot.
Ah,
Nice.
That's really why one of the main reasons for that was, and I think the side effect is it slows traffic down.
Yeah,
It does.
They were gonna enlarge that parking lot, take up some of the green space, and they found those parking spaces right there on the street.
right. It works great. I think it's even when there's nobody parked there, drivers are still driving in their lane, right? Because that's what we're trained to do. So when your lane's a little narrower.
I
So
think that would be awesome. And from all of the residents that I know on that stretch, including myself, that's one thing we would love, is to be able to have people park on the street safely in front of our houses. And
okay.
also all the kids walking back and forth to Hickson or wherever will have a buffer if they were on whatever side of the street that ends up being on. That would be
So-
great.
I don't know. I'm happy to put together a proposal. And I actually, it's funny because I need to go back and remeasure to make sure. That's one of the reasons I wasn't coming out of the gates with 2 lanes and a parking lane. But I'm pretty sure it was about 30 feet. We'd have to kind of double check the whole stretch. The other question is, the city's going to want to think about it, because obviously there's a signal here at Swan. So you have to make sure that things are lined up correctly and, all that. So I could think a little bit more about that, because if you're doing 2 lanes and parking, then you're actually shifting the lanes to the left or to the right. And I think that's our same resident in the room, but one of the thoughts I had is you could even consider putting the parking on opposite sides of the blocks so that you're actually creating kind of a chicane effect.
Yeah.
So anyway, just out of curiosity, Anne, do you know if there would be a preference to which side of the street from residents, since you live in that area? Just as I'm coming up with a draft.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to think it through, and I can ask around.
And it might not be something we could do in this first block, this,
Oh, actually, you know
northernmost
what?
block.
Sorry, I'm thinking, so some of the folks on the east side of the street have an alley behind their houses so they've got that access, and then on the west side, we don't.
Oh,
So we've got fewer places to let people park who are visiting, and we can't go behind our houses and sneak in. We've got to use Elm. So I would think the west side would be preferable.
okay. I just made that note.
And what about people getting out of their cars on the Elm?
I think it would slow
You-
people down.
You mean as far as like opening your door and
Yeah,
getting out?
I'm just talking about, safety.
So it should be the same. So technically we could, depending on, I don't know what the city considers their minimum. But 30 feet, an 8-foot parking lane is typical. And then that would leave us 2 11-foot driving lanes, which is narrowed, but still,
Like Maplewood, for example.
Right.
Yeah. So it'd be similar to any other parking lane, although
Right.
again, like you said, Elm, there's a little more traffic and a little more,
Well, we gotta be aware, the
Yeah.
prime fire district is right there, and that's
Right.
an avenue that fire trucks are on all the time, if we still have any. And, and that's the route to the highway. And so anything that makes it more difficult for our trucks to get down that way
I think
needs to be considered.
it might make it easier for people to move over. I don't
Yeah.
imagine those
Yeah.
spots would be filled often or completely, like the UPS guy would use them, landscapers would use them. I feel like it'd be easier to get out of the way
right.
for the trucks to go through.
we would make sure that we follow our own unpublished, unconfirmed parking guidelines, which is, I think somewhere around 18 to 24 feet or whatever, one
Mhm.
side of parking is still leaves us enough clear space for a safety.
Right.
But it's a good comment, Steve, because also South Elm is classified. I'm not sure how it's classified, but it's a higher level in classification than
Yeah.
many of our streets in the city. So we do want to make sure that there's no prohibitations by according to the
Prohibitions?
classification. Prohibitions, thank
Prohibitions.
you. Yeah.
It took me a minute.
yeah.
I knew it.
I know that would be tied to the classification. But again, if we're just creating a memo, that says, hey, this is an idea we feel might have merit, and then staff takes it from there, because obviously they're the final decision makers anyway. So they would know if that's something that's not allowed on Elm. But in our case, at least we're trying, and we're trying to keep this ball rolling.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll chime in there that I was so excited, Captain Perks, that you sent the email about the federal grant proposal that y'all put in.
That's South Elm, south of Glendale.
Yeah,
all the
Right.
way to
you can
Watson.
walk to Walgreens without getting hit by a car. Did
Right.
you guys talk to each other and get the idea for applying for the grant, or who spearheaded that?
No idea.
Oh, you just got
I
word
was
that,
notified by our public works department that the grant had been applied for.
oh, wonderful.
So, I mean, I know they are working on a lot of projects and they're trying to get funding for various things throughout the city. And so they're trying to keep me informed on things so I can let you all know that this is.
I was gonna credit you. Well, anyway, so that's amazing. Yeah, take it. That's amazing that they're gonna do that. And then we've got the North Elm piece, but I mean, the South Elm piece is the one that's been historically a huge problem with Swan and the stoplight going from a stop sign to a stoplight, which created a huge problem, which was lied about by the city government at the time. So I want to make sure that that's being addressed, and I've got 250 signatures specifically on that part of the street that people want to see changes. I've got specific remarks from them about safe crossing at Jackson and Cedar. So I want to make sure we're actually going to do something about that stretch.
Carrie,
So
what's
go ahead.
involved with adding crosswalks?
I was just gonna say, you're reminding me that the other thought I had was to ask them while they're out there, if they should decide to stripe longitudinal lines, is to stripe crosswalks into, which are another proven way to slow traffic, because it creates kind of that visual, I like to call it visual noise. So when there's more visual noise, drivers kind of slow down to make sure they are following what's going on. It's the same thing, it's just paint. They do need to make sure for ADA rules that there are ramps that they're connecting to. And I can't get enough detail off this map. But ideally, they could go in and stripe crosswalks too at a lot of these areas where we have crossroads, as long as there are ramps at the corners. So we could request them that they do that at the same time. I'm sure there are at Elm, because there's a signal in there. I'm almost sure.
You mean Swan?
Sorry, Swan and Elm.
Yes, and they just redid them with those weird red bumpy pieces. And
Oh,
I just
tactile.
walked here. And I know they're at Cedar,
Okay.
and I didn't cross Jackson, so I know they are at Cedar, so that would be ADA compliant.
Right. So anywhere they have the ramps, they can connect them across Elm. They should be able to with some crosswalks. And that would be another great way to kind of visually slow down drivers. So we'd be basically narrowing their driving path this way and then breaking it up, visually forward. So I thought that could be a way to.
Can I ask one question? You said there's a grant that has been applied for and there are grants are available. What is this committee's budget pool drawing from? Is there an amount that's for street improvements or?
No, we don't have that. We don't have that.
We don't have a budget. No, we have a little bit of discretionary budget. I think that was assigned from COVID relief, but we we share it with the sustainability committee. And I think that's going to be part of this conversation that we're just starting with that sustainability committee. But I mean, honestly, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it was like $1,800 shared. So, Clark's talked about maybe getting TrailNet involved with a complete streets plan and that
Mhm.
that wouldn't even begin to pay for that. So,
Well, and there is other money available that I think we'll find out more about tomorrow, but
okay,
yeah, we're just advisory.
Advisory.
Well, I get that you guys give advice to city council. I just wondered, what does city council budget for street improvements? They've gotta have,
Yeah, I think you'd have to go to the city council.
maybe a lot.
And they're going through the budgeting process now, so it's a really good time to go.
So Carrie, I think that would be awesome to have you write a memo on that stretch of South Elm. I kind of don't think it's wide enough for 2 lanes and
a
parking.
parking lane.
No, but any sort of the visual noise, traffic calming, I mean, this is paint and people's time, so I think it'd be worth asking for right now.
And I think that was my idea, something we could ask for now.
Yeah.
Let me,
Wait, can I add a few comments, Carrie, on that?
sure,
So on the driving lane versus a parking lane, and what Steve brought up is a very good point. So a drive lane is a drive lane, like right now is a drive, the entire 2 lanes are drive lanes until there's a vehicle parked there. And once that vehicle is parked there, that now becomes a parking lane and not a drive lane. And then so cars would have to then put on their blinker, cross over the yellow line and pass that car. If we stripe that and the car is hanging over or narrowed or whatnot, now we're having vehicles parked in parking lanes and then narrowing drive lanes. Which then make them, and if we go with a traditional 8-foot parking lane, that leaves us with 2 11-foot drive lanes, which is below the drive lanes that we would want is just 12 feet. So then.
I think the city does use, I thought they used 11 feet in some cases. I know that.
In some. but
TCD allows it
Right.
down to 10, actually.
It does.
Yeah,
So that's something to consider though, because you gotta take into account that drive lanes become parking lanes as soon as you put a parked car in. And if
Right.
you allow parking on that, it becomes a parking lane.
right.
So,
Well,
that's just stuff to think about.
Parking's allowed there now, right?
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
okay.
Yes, on both sides of the street.
So depending on the width of these curbs, and I can't remember if these are rolled curbs or if I think they're vertical curbs, which
They're
that
square
means,
shaped.
They're vertical.
Yeah. Okay, so in that case, that means we can you can see here that there's like a beige, kind of a whitish beige strip, and that's just
Yeah.
basically the gutter. But we can park in the gutter if we have a flat curb. So that being said, let me see. It looks like it's about 32 feet. So that is enough room for an 8-foot parking lane and actually, so 211, maybe 12 foot, depending on how wide it actually is. This is saying 31. So now you see why this about is, oh, look, we can really zoom in there. This is about as close as I can get without going out in the field. But we do have somewhere around 30 feet potentially to work with. So
Okay,
I think it's
Right.
possible. Now, this is one spot. We need to spot check the whole corridor, but
So should it be too slender? What about 2 driving lanes and a bike lane? Because again, that feels like a buffer for pedestrians. Sorry, bikers for being the buffer, but does that make any sense as visual noise and traffic calming?
it does. I personally, this is where we get into philosophical questions. I am not a big fan of putting bike lanes in that don't connect to anything. Because then you're using your bike lanes as a tool. Now,
Okay.
that's just me. I'd much rather personally see a parking lane. So I'd be curious to
Okay.
go and check, see how wide some of these areas are where they did that, like how wide some of these lanes are. Like in this case, 18 feet. So we're talking about an 8-foot parking lane and a 10-foot driving lane. So that's exactly what we're talking about, except in this case, they've got a median instead of a striped center
Perfect.
line.
All right.
But it doesn't stop anybody if you have a fire truck or a trash truck. It doesn't stop anybody from driving over that white line or the center line. But what it does is it does slow down the thoughtful, cautious drivers.
Mhm.
Like my husband always says, it'll stop the honest thieves, So,
Might as well do that.
yeah, it's something, right?
Yeah, yep.
Carrie, can I add one more thing back to the South Elm?
Sure, yeah.
The crosswalk idea you want to put in your memorandum, the ADA accessible crossing, the drop ramps only go
Mhm.
north and south on Elm. They do not cut across Elm at Swan, Jackson, and Cedar. They only
That's
go
an
north and
issue.
south.
Okay, thank you for that. Oh, wait, here,
Is there a
see where
reason
we
that
are.
they did it
If-
that way?
Yeah, that's
It's-
weird.
It's not typical to put crosswalks across main thoroughfares like that without a
Oh.
stop sign or a signal.
Why didn't they do this? Are you saying? they
Here,
did
it's-
this one?
It's Captain Perks here. It's on the corner. So when they're on the
That's
corner
Swan.
like this.
That's
um,
Swan? Or
okay.
what road is that?
Yeah. it's-
I think that's here. I can turn the I don't like to turn roads on. They get in my way. This
No,
is
that's
Cedar.
Cedar.
That is
So
Yeah,
it's
Cedar.
Cedar, it's on the corner. So when it's on the corner like that, it's basically telling you can go either direction.
Actually,
Right.
I know it goes, yeah, east-west there, because I've used
Yeah.
that weird one on that northwestern corner.
So I bet a bunch of these though, for sure, the one-way connections won't have the ability to do east-west crossings. That's
Right.
pretty typical. But hopefully maybe
Yeah.
in the areas where there's, like in this one, I think that's a corner ramp. I can't tell by the
Yeah.
trees, but if they go to the corner, then we can use them to go all directions.
Right.
So, and hopefully that would just be paint. But again,
Awesome.
that's something that the city could weigh in on, but I'd rather have them tell us, no, we're not gonna help pedestrians and why. You know,
Hey, just another point to make out though too, it is not common to put a crosswalk in on a non-stop sign or non-signal crossing. It is typical, that's why you have the crossings go north and south there, because the east and west traffic is stopped at a stop
Stopped.
sign. The north and south continuously goes, and so to put a crosswalk across a non-signal roadway is highly inadvisable.
Well, here.
yeah,
other
no, that's a
places
good
I've
point.
lived have it.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of the
No.
culture.
Yeah,
Well, and it's also, that's why I was referring to the hierarchy of roads on on a road like this, that would be less common too.
And I
Down
thought it
the-
was oh, sorry, Carrie, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Is it classified as a minor arterial?
It is an arterial of some way, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, so minor or major, still an arterial is,
Yeah,
you know, basically your suburban long distance.
yeah.
It's one step
Well-
down from highways.
And Cedar, is that one block from an elementary school where every morning kids need to cross? I mean, it just, and if we're going Vision Zero complete streets, then we would put a pedestrian crosswalk there.
Yeah. So long term, we could you know, look at something like RRFBs. So, you know, we were talking about, you guys have probably seen them, right? Where you walk up and you push the button and
Yeah.
the light starts flashing. Something like that would allow us to do more enhanced east-west crossing or something like that. That is a good point, Captain Perks. They're probably not going to want to stripe those in on an arterial without a stop sign or some sort of pedestrian.
some sort of
Control.
signage or control. there.
Yeah.
Did
So,
did I say that last time that apparently Bristol's been trying to hire a crossing guard for that Cedar crossing, because they used to have one and they can't find anybody to do it. So, and there used to be a stop sign there either permanently, and I'm talking like the sixties. Or there was a person there with one, so kids could cross twice a day.
It was, when I started here, it was a rotating stop sign.
Yeah. And somebody like at the church over,
like
Police
it
officers
on
were responsible
Big
for
Bed
doing it.
or on
Yeah.
the Kirkham, yeah.
There was 4 or 5 of them, and every morning before school, we had to go and sting and swing the stop sign out. And then an hour later, go back and swing it the other way.
yeah,
And then ultimately those were voted out.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's been 20 years.
We
Those-
haven't had a good
yeah.
use of time.
There's reasons why those cause drivers don't expect them. So, you know, people feel safe
Right.
crossing because the stop is turned the way that they need it to cross. So it makes a
Yeah.
pedestrian feel safe, but then a driver is not used because it's not consistent. They get, there's non-compliance more often. And so that creates kind of a safety issue. I feel like there's a lot of different ways we can address this. And I think one of the things we'll need to start with is that data that we'll hopefully get at some point. But I was trying to think of ways to keep the ball rolling in the meantime.
Yeah.
How long do we have to table the data collection between?
And until Public Works is able to get the tubes out, the monitoring tubes, and they won't put them out during the winter at all.
Yeah,
So because if there's any chance of any inclement weather, then they're scrambling to go, remember, you get everything picked up before plows and everything else go out. So
tear them up. Yeah.
Yep.
That's fairly standard. Okay, so not to, I feel like we've kind of torn through that discussion for quite a while, but I have an action item to come up with a draft and at least, again, try to keep this ball rolling, I think is fair to what we're trying to accomplish, but fair to the residents who have made this request. Okay, and then we've already discussed the on-street parking. So there's another action item to come up with another draft to kind of look at the two drafts and kind of see where we want to go with that. And that's me. And then we have covered the status that everything's coming through our action items. So from now on, maybe we'll just copy and paste the action items as the old business, the Complete Streets Initiative, and we should know more after that meeting this week. Did I miss any old business? And is there any new business?
Well, I had a couple of questions, and I don't know if this is like considered new business, but if someone wanted to bring an issue, since I'm pretty new to the committee, what is the best way to go about it? Do the citizens write a letter, or because that, since people have known I'm on this committee, I've had a couple of people approach
So-
me about things.
Real simple answer that they can contact any one of you all, and then you just
Okay.
forward that to me. And then I
Okay.
will get it to Chris and Carrie, and then we'll put it on you. Or, I mean, if it's an issue, if we already have an ordinance in place, or we already have like something in
Okay.
place that can address that issue, I won't bring it to the TAC at all. We'll just address it through Public Works and have the signage changed or something
Okay.
like that. But if it's something to where we would possibly need an ordinance change or something like that, then I would forward it to
To you
Carrie and
and
Chris.
Carrie.
Yeah, to
Okay.
Chris and Carrie, and then they would put it.
And then you can also let me know if
Right.
it's just something we don't deal with.
Right.
Because
Which-
sometimes I've had to tell people, I have no idea.
A perfect example of that is the one over the no parking here to corner over on Park.
Yeah,
That was an issue that was, and we didn't have to bring it to you all technically because we already had an ordinance in place. And all we did was put up a sign that said no parking here to corner, which cleared that vision up.
okay, sweet, great.
So-
Thank
So if
you.
somebody approaches you, so the best thing for her to do is have them put it in an email and then
Right.
you send it.
Yep.
Okay.
Real simple.
And just as another, what we've learned along the way so far is that if it's something that affects a lot of residents that comes up, just,
Yes.
that person might need to know that down the road, you may need to do like a help me out, Ian, whatever you just did, like a survey or a,
Petition.
We're not allowed to
Petition.
call it a petition.
thank
are we?
you.
Oh, we can't call it a petition?
Well, for
A
example.
petition or something that, so,
A list of support.
so that that we're aware that the majority of residents in the area are behind whatever is being requested,
Yeah.
so that we don't go too far down the road on an idea.
I think it was the member wasn't supposed to
As with, the-
initiate the petition.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
that was the issue.
That was
No.
the issue.
Petition
can't
was the
run a
word I was
citizen
looking for. I had
Well, no,
So then you
survey
need
and
to put
poll.
together a letter, yeah.
About the
yeah.
petition issue, summer before last, I wrote a letter on behalf of other people too.
Mhm.
About the lack of sidewalk between Greeley and Newport. And I sent the letter to the city council. About issues with the speeding there on Summit, lack of posted speed limit, and you mentioned there's a rule,
There's a distance,
yes.
a space between speed limit
Because
signs.
we, had in the letter how far it was from another speed limit sign. And I got a letter back from the then mayor saying that it was up to us to start, and she used the word petition. To do anything about it, so that we would have to talk to the residents to see along there. To see how they felt about it, and that was pretty much just ball back at us.
Yeah.
So we just sort of didn't pursue it at that time. Is that still like?
Yeah.
Pretty much. the
So a
way?
lot of it is, particularly if it's going to, if you're wanting something to change that is going to affect
Right.
numerous amounts of residents. Then you would want that kind of support or those people showing that. And then with the idea coming forward, we have the petition backing it, stating that, yes, we are all in favor of this change or idea here. And then we would put out Public Works for studies, speed studies, distance studies, that kind of thing.
I mean, I
to
think
see.
people would be reasonable if it was like totally, well, this just can't happen.
Mhm.
But can we use the word petition now?
No, yeah, you can, you can.
You can, because,
I wasn't supposed to, you're good.
but then when I got the letter back saying it's up to you to do a petition.
Right.
And then when we were talking in here.
So that was probably when this council was defunct though, or what are we called, committee?
Committee.
So now that we're
I
back
didn't
and
even
running and
know
we've got,
about the committee at that point.
so can
We
you
didn't know.
resubmit it? Can she just resubmit it and then we could reconsider it now?
Whatever, whatever the complaint was or issue.
Okay, it's just the issues, there's no sidewalk and it's really dangerous.
By Webster United Methodist?
No, on Summit,
Summit.
between Greeley and Newport.
Yeah, that's on my Sunday route. It is, I mean, it,
People walk dogs, ride bikes to the bike trail. I mean, if you're walking, I've had to jump out of the way on many
Here,
occasions.
I pulled it up, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I can't find it.
This is Greeley and here's Summit. So there are, in fact, yeah. Is that a fence? That's a fence line. I just want to
Is it
clarify.
Possible, like, I don't know, there are fences but people have carved from walking, jumping out of the way.
See
Along
that,
there.
Carrie, where you're going up and down right there, that is a guardrail.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it a guardrail? That's what I was
That's
trying
not
to
there.
figure
I mean,
out.
you can
That's
walk down
fencing.
there
South of
safely.
that.
Oh,
is
right here?
guardrail. That's
Yeah.
guardrail.
In front of the little
Okay.
theater. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what people do, but
Oh, the Webster.
And so
Theater guild?
part of that is, I don't know, and this is where Public Works would come in for measurement side, that, because I see on the west side there's nowhere they're putting in a sidewalk there. But on the right-hand side,
okay.
on the
yeah.
east side, I don't know,
Even
but that's
there, I
what
mean, we've got that where you can
Right.
walk down
Theater
there,
lane.
but it's,
Yeah.
yeah. But then farther
Right.
the other way, I mean, people have walked the path. If you go back toward really in the dirt along there.
Along the.
A second,
east side.
yeah.
on
Yeah.
the east side.
So I guess my question earlier was kind of like, for the installation of sidewalks, like, I guess. Where does that come from city council wise?
Right there, see people walk on that.
Yep,
opposite
there's-
Yeah, you can
curve. I mean, that's the
Here's-
only,
Go ahead.
well, there's a curve there. I mean, it's just, when my kids were young, I used to worry about them constantly riding their bikes there.
Right.
You can't, where it curves, you can't see what's coming. And people do drive really fast on Summit
Mm.
as they do up on Mile Park. It's kind of a thoroughfare.
Well, that
Cut
stretch of the road
through.
always just strikes me as it's inconsistent. It's like it's like a remnant of an old country path,
Mhm.
and it is what it is. So either, you come along and redesign it. Or,
I mean, or would that go to sustainability where there is, I mean, that's pretty odd not to have any sidewalk.
Well, I think that, again, I think that's what a policy does, is really
Mhm.
has evaluation, has a overarching goals.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
those are addressed.
Project by
as
project.
you can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because one thing I couldn't attest to on any of that is the engineering side of that, on the widths and is there
Right.
possibility and how many
Right.
trees have to be taken down and then.
I mean, there's
is there-
literally no place
I
to
don't-
walk
I don't
at a
know.
couple of the places
So you
there.
can walk right in the street.
Well, yeah, that's what everybody does. You have
Well, it's
to.
exciting to identify those places that residents are most concerned about, and let's do those first.
Yeah.
Once we get the policy, once we get the momentum.
Okay.
There are a lot of streets, in Webster that don't have sidewalks.
Yeah.
There are.
A
It's
lot.
so just for the record, my street, this is what I understand of at least the sidewalk process. I know we all know that Webster doesn't really have a tax base and a lot of fun. So I do think in response to the question earlier, where do the funds come from? I'm sure there's a budget. I just think it's mainly based on maintenance and not new construction. So when it comes to new construction of a new sidewalk or something like that, I think that's where it gets difficult for the city. And this is totally just my experience, and this is based on a few years ago, but I live here on Central. And we are a walking path between, this is Annunciation and here's Clark School. And so we had a resident who was we had no sidewalks and was determined, rightfully so, to get a sidewalk on our street.
Yeah.
And I think it was either 8 or 12 years. I think it was 8. I think it was
Wow,
8 years. Because they have to get the funds to design it, which is one thing. And then in this case, and I don't know if this is standard procedure or not, but they went after grant money to install it. And so that took some time too. But it is, and like Captain Perks said, that's how they're redoing South Elm, right, is grant money. So my very high level guess from, you know, just things I've seen in the past is that for new construction, they might kind of depend on grant funding for that.
Right.
Well, wouldn't they have to like in an easement or take 6 feet
Yes.
of people's property and?
Yeah.
everybody-
Yes, yeah, we all had to sign off on the easement because
That's
actually it's in my front
another issue.
yard.
Mm.
So,
Another issue.
and it also depends too, I mean, we're getting into the weeds here, but you know, you can see sort of that here's where all the utility poles are. You can't put a sidewalk where there's utility poles. You just, I mean, you can, but you just can't. We couldn't, I don't think any city could afford to do that. So there's some, I don't know, that's just a
So it's
answer kind of that
probably,
question.
It's
Well,
You
I
know,
wouldn't
it's not
say
impossible.
impossible.
But
It's
yeah.
just, you have to really take everything into consideration
Right.
and then think about it could be 10, 12, 15 years down the road before anything happens.
yeah, and there is a lot of traffic
And
there.
Right.
I'll give you all another thing too, just Webster Groves has approximately 300 linear miles of road surface. That's a lot.
Mhm.
Clark's exactly right, though. I mean, when you have a complete streets program, that you can just always point back to that as,
Right.
you know, where does this money go first? Or, you know, what is our overall intention? And it really does help to define funding, in my experience, to define where funding goes and how we go about it. So no, I didn't mean to imply it by any means that it's impossible. I was just trying to
No, I
answer
mean,
some of those
I
questions.
certainly see the issues there.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely,
Yeah.
but as someone who uses that all the
Yes.
time, right?
I would think that would help home values if you get a sidewalk in your neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Although some people don't like it because we are required, I think, I don't know. It's very gray on
Have to-
who's
you have
who's required to maintain
shovel
it.
in front of your
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
Have to.
I'd be curious
Wow.
though, if this was an area that comes to us and we dig into it, if there's other options that we could look into. You can tell by looking at this that it was, I'd be very curious because this is the kind of nerd I am, to dig into the history of the street.
Mhm.
It looks like it got cut in
Yeah,
Mhm.
differently than the rest of the grid.
well, there are
so-
two summits
There are
there.
two some-
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
very
something.
confusing.
Yeah.
Tried that before.
Anyway, sorry, I did just
Oh,
digress
that was
again.
very helpful.
Were those all
Um,
your questions?
Oh, and then just as we're talking about crosswalks, somebody approached me about where the restaurants are on Lockwood. If we could have another crosswalk, but I don't know if they have to be street. to
What part of
street,
Lockwood?
Like around Jefferson there.
What, they mean
Yeah.
a restaurant?
Well, where
Lockwood.
Olive and Oak.
Yeah.
and-
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yes.
people cross
Amen.
there.
Down right in front of like Robust.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
amen.
Crowds
That
and
would-
down the
yes,
street,
crowds.
right? at-
I've brought this up
That's-
several times. Here's what I think we need on Elm. We need curb bulbs and we need way more
Yes.
north-south crosswalks.
Yep.
Yes.
And I have brought that up. I actually talked years ago, though. It's been a few years, to the city planner, and it was like, we need grant money for that, you know?
You know, the one on Gray is there
Yeah,
and it is dangerous. And I think
Yeah.
if there were more of them, it would, I mean, I really believe it would be less dangerous. You know.
I believe curb bulbs would be helpful too, because
Yeah.
if you've got cars parked and you have a person standing right back
Yeah.
here, you don't necessarily see them, but if your
I
person is
see.
standing right here, they're much more visible.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the origin story of that crossing is just because Dave Buck was walking with his grandkid, I think, from Bristol. Bristol's right there, and they almost got hit, and he made something
Ah.
That's
happen.
an urban legend.
That's the urban legend. Sorry, Dave.
is it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That wasn't.
That's what he told me.
Yeah.
But we
This
need
isn't-
more, the point is we need more to make that one safer
Yeah,
too.
that-
We
it-
do.
Yeah, one more, now that
I know a lot.
it's open at night, families crossing.
What's the street? Jackson, is that the one right by Robust?
Yeah,
Jefferson.
here's,
Jefferson,
yeah,
that would be
Jefferson.
perfect.
Jefferson.
I mean, people cross there all the time
All the
and,
time.
it's dodgy, but.
Yeah, people cross, there's the RFB, where is the one we have? There is one of those, I think, or is it just a flashing, there's something down here. No, it's not an RFB. But there is like a pedestrian crossing somewhere in here now.
No, that's
the one
not,
on
that's
Gray.
it, Gray.
The one
Is
on
it
Gray
That's
has
the
Gray?
only one.
Flashing light.
Like
Oh,
little
yes.
tiny- Like little tiny lights.
And you have to walk a little bit out to convince the cars that they should stop
Right.
for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a great thing to me. This precisely is where the overlap of the TAC and the sustainability is.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm hoping that we come together and, are able to, I don't know, get grant requests or come up with a methodology to go after grant funding to do things like this.
Right, and I mean, if you go the other way, there's only one crosswalk between Elm and Baum Park. There's one at the library,
One at the library.
Yeah,
Which is at a stop sign.
yeah.
but it's the only one.
Yeah, they need one like Dewey's. What's that street by Dewey's?
Yeah. Plant.
Sylvester?
Plants.
No.
Sylvester.
I think Plant.
Plant.
Yeah, or Sylvester.
That's
Yeah.
Sylvester right there, yeah.
I think Kirkwood has too much money. I was just walking near KUMC, Kirkwood United Methodist, and like Magic Market, whatever it's called now, St. Peter's, and they have, you walk out into the street in a little neighborhood and it says look with an exclamation mark really big.
On
And
the street.
it did catch my attention, and then I did make sure I was looking, but I was like, that seems like a lot.
Yeah, they have they have a huge tax base,
It's
huge.
like
Oh,
in
man.
London, look right,
Yeah, they even tell you which way.
yeah, because you get,
Yeah, exactly.
No,
You're
no.
gonna get hit if you're not from there. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I just realized it's 6:35. So, do I have a notice or a call to adjourn? Propose, whatever the word
so
is.
moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. And then I'm gonna adjourn
Oh,
us.
wait, how about the vote again?
Oh, yeah, all in favor? Yeah, do we
Aye.
have to, I guess
Aye.
we do say all in favor to adjourn. Aye. So sorry to pull that so quick. I just realized it's 6:35.
I mean, if
Um,
you wanna follow Robert's rules. Absolutely.
Yeah, I try to
First,
follow
second,
Robert's
discussion,
rules.
vote.
I'm kind of loosey goosey. Have you noticed?
I'm pretty loosey-goosey on that too.
That's kind of formal. We all should wear our top hats to the meetings too, but. All right, thank you all. I'm gonna hang up.
Feel
for a second.
better.
Yep,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Carrie.
Take care.
What about next meeting? Do we wanna,
Oh.
Oh.
I will, you wanna schedule
March?
Carrie, or you can just email me and I can put some dates out.
That sounds
I think,
perfect.
I think you're
I'm
gonna need some
assuming we'll
time.
aim
to-
for March.
Yeah, aim for March, but I think you're gonna need some time to put some stuff together.
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, I have, yeah.
Email me.
That sounds good.
All right.
So
well,
hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, Clark. I might be in a mask.
all right,
Yeah.
sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Carrie.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.